The amount of time you end up spending with your team means that you're going to have to deprioritize time spent in real relationships and friendships.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm super excited today to be joined by Roei Samuel. Roei's a seasoned entrepreneur, angel investor, and also a passionate advocate for neurodiversity, which we'll really get into.
The things you would learn and take away from what you did, this is the way you should do it today.
Getting that first meeting is a bit of a rigged game, but the best entrepreneurs, when the door is open, they know.
Roei's got a remarkable track record of founding and scaling businesses, including Real Sport, which grew to millions of users before being acquired in 2018, just after Roei left university. He's now the CEO and co-founder of Connected, a pioneering platform designed to simplify fundraising and build stronger relationships between startups, investors, and experts.
What are some of the one or two things that you would advise a young founder? Make sure you have this, and this to kind of protect yourself and understand how you can scale from there.
If you have a reliable route to generating leads, then you have sufficient opportunities to figure out what the hell you're doing.
Now, with extensive experience mentoring entrepreneurs and a deep understanding of the startup ecosystem, plus a unique perspective shaped by his own journey, Roei brings invaluable insights into the challenges and opportunities of modern entrepreneurship. What should schools be teaching kids today? Now, before we dive into conversation, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Studio Space. Studio Space is an innovative, on-demand marketing agency platform that lets you browse and brief top agencies. You can receive proposals, get started all in one place. They handle everything: contracting, invoicing, procurement, the whole thing, as well as legal. So you can focus on scaling your business with the best talent at your fingertips. Ultimately, with Studio Space, you can take your brand to the next level. Check them out.
Roei, awesome to have you, man. Totally pumped that you came along. So tell me, what's been going on in 2025?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me here, guys. Real pleasure to be here with you both. 2025, I can't believe it's almost nearly March. We've had a really exciting start to the year. We launched in New York in the middle of January. Obviously, the US right now is a place going through a big shift, a lot of transition. But in terms of the business community, how open it is for business, we found it amazing so far. So that's been really exciting. We started off in Miami last year, although really because of the nature of our business, having geographic boundaries is a little bit arbitrary. So you really wanted to use Miami as a bit of a testing ground for us. We're now in New York, and then we hope to be nationwide this year. So 2025 should be a big one.
Well, Roei, it's fantastic to have you on, particularly at this time. It feels like a really pivotal time to have you on. We probably need to unwind for people who don't know you that well and go back to the beginning. And if I remember my university days, it was like getting drunk a little bit, doing a bit of sport, trying to find my future wife, which I successfully did. She was actually a neighbour in my halls of residence. But I wasn't really thinking about starting a tech company. So you're a pretty unique beast. You started a tech company whilst at university. So tell us about how it all began.
Yeah, well, ADHD, so I find it very difficult to have dead time. In fact, my biggest fear in life is getting to the end of the to-do list, because then all there is ADHD management. So staying busy is a really, really good thing to do. So I've always tried to have entrepreneurial endeavors on the side and started off a little bit of that at uni in first year, running trips, really events, club nights. We were running trips I did my undergrad in Nottingham, from Nottingham to Amsterdam, and then you as well? Amazing, there you go. And then Nottingham to Old Trafford, and just, finding interesting ways of making money and trying new things. And then me and the guy I was working with at the time created an idea, which was students have got lots of interesting opinions. We wanted to give them something online that allowed them to build content and just create a bit of a hub for themselves, create a bit of a social network for university students. And it was really, really interesting, but what we found is sponsors did not really care about the university market. Turns out students don't have a lot of money, who knew? So then we decided to evolve that into sports. And with the way that world was developing, we ended up building content creation tools, helping people create podcasts, videos, giving them tools to optimize content for social, which is really ahead of its time in 2013. We applied it to the world of sports and gaming, big sports fan and a big gaming fan at the time as well. And we got really fortunate. We ended up scaling to about 9 million monthly users over 4.5 years, which was a crazy journey, monthly users. And then we were acquired by a big gaming company called Gfinity in 2018. So super exciting journey. Didn't know that's where it would go when we started running trips from Nottingham to Amsterdam, but there you go.
And you got your feet up ever since, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. No, unfortunately with the ADHD thing, the feet up bit is just, retirement scares me. So very much getting started.
So Roy, tell me then. So you've gone through that journey. I mean, gosh, how many young people can say they've been through that sort of a business climb and then exit on the back of it? But clearly the world has moved on. Clearly things are changing. So if you were going to then sort of do it all over again or advise young people to kind of go, well, world of entrepreneurship, what would be some of the things you would learn and take away from what you did? And then what would you then add on as a layer on top to kind of go, this is the way you should do it today?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the barriers to entry are lower than they've ever been. And I think it's such an exciting time to be a young entrepreneur in that way. Even when we look at the businesses that we built back in 2013, 14, you needed either a lot of expertise or millions of pounds to build software. Now with platforms like Lovable and Cursor, like you can get an MVP in people's hands for nothing in no time. It's mind-blowing, right? Yeah. It's such an exciting time. So I think if you're young and entrepreneurial, just try. You could spend years in the lab trying to perfect, but now with that availability of tooling and the barriers to entry being so low, just go for it.
Yeah, but barriers to entry being one thing, right? But then the thing is, how do you differentiate yourself when you've got such low barriers to entry and you got everyone giving it a go?
Well, this is a good question. I don't know how much you need to differentiate yourself for the first time as a business owner. If you're going for either a big market, then the market is going to be huge. And if you're just trying to find your feet and start your first entrepreneurial endeavor, you just need a few customers as a starting point. You just need to figure out the value you're giving to a customer and communicate that clearly. And then, of course, you can grow and iterate over time, but almost like the idea of how to differentiate, all this market mapping, these are all things that stop you starting. Just start is the ways that I'd go. It's never going to end up being what you thought it was at the start, but the only way to find out is put it into action.
Love that. Just get started. And it's the classic differentiation versus distinctivity conversation, which rages on in marketing. So you mentioned ADHD, and my sense is it's probably that double-edged sword of it's a superpower, but also has its drawbacks. What role has that played in your power and the resilience you've required in being an entrepreneur?
Well, I think it's quite misunderstood. I think where we are with neurodiversity is still very, very early. And I would love to know who this neurotypical person is, right? That we're all some sort of, variant of, like, who's this guy in the middle?
We're all crazy in our own way.
This is it, right? This is it. So I think for me, the ADHD manifests really well in the sense of a lot of energy. But if you channel that energy to a positive thing, it's great. If you have nowhere to channel it, or you channel it into something negative, it's really destructive. So I think just like with anything in life, awareness, inserting a bit of consciousness to your activities and the way that you manage things, lots of great tools for doing that. But I think most founders I know, there's a big divide. Those who ended up on the journey of being a founder because of difficult circumstances growing up that gave them the resilience, that gave them that part of the toolkit that ended up being so impactful when they go on that horrible, crazy, lovely, beautiful, amazing up and down roller coaster of entrepreneurialism. And I think there's those who develop it along the way. So for me, it's something I saw growing up a lot. My dad was a bus driver, mum primary school teacher, who'd come over from Hungary. My dad had tried so many different things, never quite made it work, was doing door-to-door sales, selling insurance door-to-door. Apparently people used to do that. Interesting. And then lost everything when he was 47, I was 7 years old. So you see that resilience. And I think by osmosis, you start developing entrepreneurial muscles and perseverance and seeing that, you just keep going. And if you have a strong mindset, doesn't matter how many barriers are there, they're just hurdles on the way to inevitable victory, which I know sounds a bit grandiose, but that's how you've got to see it a little bit. And he ended up selling a company when he was 69 years old.
No
He
way.
got an exit. Yeah,
Hey.
it was £1 million exit,
Amazing.
and he never stopped. He never stopped. So fair play.
I love that thought. Well, you're an investor today, and a prolific person in the startup community. So, I'd love to get your take on what you think are the muscles. You talk about entrepreneurial muscle. What are the muscles do you think that it takes, and what are you looking for when trying to pick your next founders and investments?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I've tried to develop a bit of a framework around this. So I say for the types of investments that I would look at and have made before, pre-seed, seed, and Series A. I don't invest later stage in that. I don't have the ticket size to invest at that stage. And, it's a different type of return profile. So at the pre-seed, the way that I prioritize what I'm looking for in a founder is, or a company, is team, then revenue, then data. At the seed stage, it transitions to revenue, then team, then data. And then at the Series A stage, it's data, revenue, team. And I'll dive into that a little bit. At the pre-seed stage, no one knows what the hell they're doing. All right? Whatever you think it is not going to be. It's all about the team. Who are the people behind this? What is the founder market fit? Why is this the right person or right team to solve this problem? Probably not going to be any revenue. Certainly not going to be any data to speak of. At the seed stage, and this is also becoming increasingly important, especially with what we were saying in terms of the low barriers to entry. These days, if you're at seed stage and you don't have some revenues to speak of or proxies for revenue, unless you're in the deepest of deep tech environments, if you're in the software environment, a consumer environment, wait lists, pipeline, strategic partnerships, letters of intent, early revenue, like if you've not cracked it at seed stage, I've lost my conviction that you're going to. The barriers to entry are low enough. And then, of course, team, and then data. And in the third stage, it's all about the data you have. Because at Series A, this is about hyperscaling. And I know that 70% of companies will break at this stage, right? That is the venture model. 70% will break, 30% will win. So you've better have your data in the right place. Because the guys coming in, the investors coming in at Series A are like, well, we're going to push. We're doing this. And if you're one of the 70% who breaks, we'll accept that. So you want to make sure that you know that you have the data to go on that scaling journey. So that's hopefully a useful framework for any founders who are thinking about different stages.
Yes, it's a very, very useful framework. And it's very obvious you know your way around the space. And so you know enough to know that there's a problem in terms of whilst talent and ideas are equally distributed, opportunity is not. And specifically in terms of getting investment and funding. So tell us the genesis of Connected and what you're trying to solve in the world with that.
Yeah, well, this is it. I think where there is a massive unfair advantage to people with network is getting that first meeting. But once you have that first meeting, it's a level playing field. I really believe. Because if you go to that first meeting prepared with these exciting things we're talking about, these proxies for revenue, the wait list, at the end of the day, investors are trying to make money. So I think getting that first meeting is a bit of a rigged game. It is a bit of a rigged game. I've seen that. But the best entrepreneurs, when the door is open, they know how to walk through. And they know how to leave an investor being like, that was an exceptional founder. So I think there's certainly those levels there. But opening the doors is one thing. You have to have the education and the knowledge to understand what you're presenting when the door is open. And that's really what we want to do with Connected for the startups, the investors, and the talent, the fractional talent, to understand the behaviors of those in the 1% who actually don't need that system. The 1% are already doing it. Let's distill that information. Let's distill that education to everyone else, which I know is so in keeping with what you guys do on the marketing side. Let's distill that information into as many hands as possible. Because at the end of the day, when I was a first-time founder with Real Sport, I was very green. I didn't know anything. Like, we got really fortunate with the product, but we ended up in a situation where when we sold Real Sport, I had thousands of pounds of payday loan debt because I didn't know what I was doing. So the swing for me at 26 was like self-made millionaire, payday loan debt. Like when we were selling the company, like a really, really crazy swing. And it's because we didn't know benchmarking. We didn't know standards. What should we be paying ourselves as founders? Paying ourselves nothing. We didn't know all of these things. So giving that education, trying to break down those doors, it's such a big thing. It's such an important thing in 2025.
I tell you what, Roei, it's so almost profound the way that you describe it. We were doing a competition a few years ago, And we had these groups of different students who were then doing a marketing pitch. You come up with a brand, and you come up with a comm strategy, and then you can pitch to a group of judges, and the ultimate prize was getting some internships with some great companies. Now, the problem that we had, right, was we had people from all walks of life coming through, and ultimately there was a group from a Russell University versus those who literally had part-time jobs and going to the local colleges, and therefore not able to meet up because they're so constrained by the timings of their jobs and what they could do, etc. And it felt like such a unlevel playing field when we put them both on the stage there, for all that sort of context that one group had, and the advantages of being able to get together, probably lots of other people to bounce the idea around, versus this other group who really struggled to even get together, let alone put a pitch. And I think it's just really symptomatic of what you've described there. And more so than that, what was interesting is when we had this knowledge gap, the way you described payday loan and £1 million. Geez, I mean, that's crazy. But actually, if you're trying to get in fact, someone once wisely told me that the key to getting started was to have the right foundations in a startup. What are the key levers that you need when you're thinking about what are the things that you should be doing in the first instance? And I wonder if that's a point there. So beyond the level playing field that you're doing it connected, what are some of the one or two things that you would advise a young founder coming into going, well, okay, make sure you have this, and this that you bring to the table to kind of protect yourself and understand how you can scale from there?
That's a really good question. And I think the knowledge gap piece is so important. The exciting thing about 2025 is the availability of high quality knowledge, better than ever, right? So what an exciting time. For me, one of the best bits of advice I was ever given about how to prioritize things that you build in your business to ensure success. Everything is downstream from lead gen. That's what I was always taught. If you have a reliable route to generating leads, then you have sufficient opportunities to figure out what the hell you're doing, right? It's probably not going to be right the first time, but if you can generate leads, you're going to have multiple goes at figuring it out. And it's the same with product market fit, even though that's a bit, that's maybe less applicable for every entrepreneur, but even in a technology environment, or especially a technology environment where product market fit is the thing which takes lots of time to get to. You need to have sufficient goes at smashing the market with the product, and they hammer away at each other until you find that fit. It all comes down to lead gen. So that is the number one piece of advice for any young entrepreneur: figure out a reliable and consistent route to leads.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it kind of is common sense, but the thing about common sense is it's not that common. So there we go. But I mean, let's get a little bit more crunchy on Connected itself, because there are other platforms out there. We've talked a little bit about how important is differentiation, but what really makes Connected pop? Yeah,
so we wanted to, I'll take a step back. After I sold Gfinity, sold RealSport to Gfinity, I started investing in startups and working with startups in a fractional capacity. Board advisor, fractional CRO, fractional CMO, and I got obsessed with the idea that the future is fractional. I think we've seen that really pan out with assets and digital assets, but I think that's now where the world of work is going. And I see that there's some really big tailwinds, hybrid working post-COVID, and now AI automation really driving home agile, fractional, project-based ways of working. And I think individuals want to diversify risk in their career in the same way they do with their investments. So I might want to spend 3 days a week getting my day rate paid by a big corporate, a day a week with a seed stage startup who's paying maybe half my day rate and a bit of skin in the game, and a day a week with a pre-seed startup where I love it and it's purpose driven. And I really think that the opportunities that will come from automation really speak to this fractional way of working. So where we differentiate ourselves with Connected is we wanted to isolate behaviors that seem to predicate success for the startups, the investors, and the fractional talent. And we isolated 2 behaviors specifically that seem to most positively correlate with successful outcomes. The first behavior was the quality and frequency of the reports that businesses gave to their investors, and by extension, their hyper focus on the core metrics within those reports. And the second was the ability for the businesses and the talent to find each other at the right time. Neither of these things are rocket science by any means. Again, common sense, right? But the interesting thing is, most people seem to take those behaviors for granted, even though they predicate success. So with Connected, we built technology to enable the businesses, the investors, and the talent to make those behaviors in as frictionless way as possible. So there's lots of platforms out there which look at the relationship between businesses and investors. Lots of businesses out there which look at the relationship between businesses and talent. We wanted to build a data-led, transactional-led environment which brings the three together and really, really solves for their success by making those behaviors as frictionless as possible.
I love when you said one of those core levers is the reporting element of it. And translating that into our marketing world, you would talk about, the metrics that matter. You talk about marketing effectiveness, and then therefore, how you're able to then optimize your campaign for the future. So if you were then translating it and sticking on reporting, what would be some of the top metrics that you would expect as an investor back, which has the biggest influence on the outcomes that you're looking for?
Really good question. And you're right. I think the marketing mindset should be adopted more by founders in that way, because it's measure, understand, improve.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we see with the best marketing campaigns and the best marketeers. And it's actually what you see in the best founders as well. It's measure, understand, improve. If it can't be measured, it can't be improved. Right. So it's the base. Again, it's going to be stage dependent. I'd say the big difference. Let's talk about pre-revenue. Most young founders starting out for the first time. One of the biggest bugbears, one of the biggest pet peeves of any investor when they're speaking to a pre-revenue, pre-seed startup is when the founder says, well, we don't have traction because we don't have funding. And we don't have funding because we don't have traction, right? It's this like negative chicken and egg, which just does not exist, because there are proxies for traction that you can build for free. As marketers, you'll love it, right? Waitlist. You don't need a product. You just need a concept. But if you've shown you can build a waitlist, you've shown you understand distribution. You've shown you understand where your customer lives, how to engage them, how to excite them. So waitlist is a proxy for revenue. Yes, you don't know what the conversion rate is going to be. You don't know the AOV, but you've built that lead gen source. If you know how to build that waitlist. So pre-revenue, waitlist is key. And then when you're into revenue, you're looking at CAC versus LTV, you're looking at ARR, you're looking at the more standard metrics. But for any pre-revenue founder out there listening to this who is feeling like they're tearing their hair out because they don't know where to go, build a waitlist, build a pipeline. If it's B2C, it's going to be your subreddits, it's going to be your WhatsApp communities. If it's B2B, you can build strategic partnerships, letters of intent. All of these things are there, at your disposal. So lots to do, no more excuses, right?
It's a great piece of advice, and for all our listeners, there's a great book by Albert Savoya called The XYZ Hypothesis, and it's about prototyping. So you don't have to invest to prototype, and we've already touched on it. The tools are available to essentially have demand generation before you've even got anything available. You mentioned about fractional, and you portrayed that life of the 3 days this, 1 day this, 1 day that, and to scratch at that a bit more. Does genuinely feel like the currency of work has changed post-pandemic in a fundamental way. I don't see the levels of engagement in big teams in corporates like it used to be, for example. But just what's your general take about the world of work?
Yeah, I mean, it's couldn't agree more with you on that side. Well, I think if you are maybe 35 or above and you are in a corporate career, you probably envisaged that you wouldn't have the time that you have right now until you were 60. You were going to be in the office 5 days a week. So this hours per week reclaimed by these individuals is one of the biggest markets that has come into existence over the last few years, so post-COVID. And as people have become more comfortable, more used to that, it probably bleeds more and more into the workday. Once you have that balance and you see what life can be outside of being in an office 5 days a week in a corporate environment, it's tough to go back. Right now, the veil has dropped.
You're taking the blue pill.
This is
or the red pill.
Whichever
pill
one,
it is.
whichever one allows you to work from home. Exactly. But that's it. Right. And I think work will never be the same again as a result. Now, bringing in the automation and AI on top of that, we are in the middle of the biggest disruption to the workforce, bigger than the Industrial Revolution, I believe.
Can I just pick up on that to get your view? I've talked to a few CMOs in the last few weeks who have inherited a target, which is to take 50% of their FTE out, 50% of their workforce out, on the promise that Gen AI will deliver that. And they've had to sign up to it because you don't get the choice, and it's unproven. But that's the scale of the quantum. So budget cuts in previous years were like 10, maybe 20%. Now they're 50%. I mean, your perspective on automation and the extent to which that is going to, wipe out big chunks of workforce.
Yeah. I don't want to go too dystopian, right? But
go dystopian.
The world needs to wake up to the reality of what's going on and the levels of investment in automation. And we have seen the tip of the iceberg, I genuinely believe.
Wow.
And I think that, let's say, people of our generation, I don't think there's as big a threat, but I'm fascinated to see if you are a child in school right now, like what world of work are you entering in 10, 15 years time? It's pretty scary. I think UBI, I think government or company-backed schemes to help people reskill, retool, like it. I struggle to see there being enough jobs for the amount of people in the world at the moment, let alone where it's going to be in 10 years time. I was on a podcast recently with Danilo Bagari, definitely butchered his name, who's a world leader in AI, and he works with governments, he works with the biggest companies in the world, and he said, he was like, I feel a moral obligation and responsibility to speak very clearly about this field is going to be automated, these jobs are going to be automated, to just put this out there. Like, people need to wake up to it. So I think it's going to be a very, very challenging scenario over the next few years, but that's why actually as an individual, the differentiation is going to be the key thing. We spoke about companies differentiating. I think companies will find niches, and I think companies will just be smaller. You won't have these megalithic new startups coming through in the way that you have previously. I think people are going to have to find niches and try and own them. But I think as an individual, you need to differentiate. I think to stand out beyond, well, let's not automate Steve because he's working with 4 different companies on the side doing really interesting things and bring more to the table versus this is all I do. We'll see how it pans out. But what do you guys think on automation?
Wowzers. I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying. I mean, the analogy, and I listen to a lot of Mo Gaudat and his thought leadership in this area. And one of the stats that struck out to me was, ChatGPT today, and it's probably already moved on, has got an IQ of 120, but it's moving at an exponential compounding rate year on year, not even faster than Moore's law. And as a consequence of that, in 3-4 years' time, we are the spare parts. I mean, wow, boom. You add in robotics into that mix, and all of a sudden, where do you go? And that's, singularity coming through in that guise. And I do agree. I kind of go, well, what are we reskilling for? And what are we going to upskill you on? And how does that then sort of work in this new sort of way? And I listen to a lot of Raoul Pal as well. And I think he is a real at the forefront of this thought leadership thinking. And I mean, his take is, we already have 6 years before the world turns on its head. And we don't know what's on the horizon after that.
Yeah.
And so make hay when the sun shines sort of thing.
100%. I mean, people talk about AGI a lot, but ASI is behind that, the artificial superintelligence, 10,000 times smarter than the human brain. Now, obviously, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but even if it's 10x smarter, that's enough, right?
Exactly. So I was very fortunate to meet Ray Kurzweil back in the day, who's proven that all technologies are exponential. And so it is with AI and all forms of it. And he had this lovely thought, which was, with all technology, there's promise and peril. It's always been the case. Fire, the foundation of all technology, kills people. Cars that get you around to meet people and get to jobs and whatever, kill people. Same with nuclear power. Same with any form of technology, promise and peril. And so it comes down to, what's your worldview? Are you an optimist or a pessimist? And so I could go either way, but what if this has allowed people to have much more fulfilled lives? The kicker though is it's never equally distributed.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So a couple things in that. I think one of the biggest differences for me with this product set and this capability set is the lack of time we have for integration. So when Fire or the TV or the smartphone or social media came out, there's like a couple of years of getting your head around it, and there's normally that really optimistic thing like, oh, this is awesome, Facebook is great. And then there's that come down to, oh, hold on, is this data farming a good thing? Is the self-harm that's going on as a result of exposure to these things a good thing? No. I think with GPT, you had like a short amount of this is the best thing ever, then into, okay, actually, where are we going with this? But the rate of innovation means the integration period is getting shorter and shorter. And then I think as we're on the cusp of quantum computing, physics, and mechanics, where already the concepts are so difficult to articulate verbally and can only really be understood fully on a formulaic and mathematical basis, we struggle to make progress in those fields because they're really hard to communicate and really hard to get your head around, but actually very easy enough mathematically if you don't need to put it into language. So the strides we're making now applying AI to progress quantum means we're not going to be able to understand or integrate that technology and understand what it really means for us in a way that we have with other types of technologies. We might be able to understand the applications, but when you have AI improving, designing, deploying this technology, like it's going to be a real struggle to stay on top of that. But it is going to allow us to do things like unlock space travel in a way that we can't fathom right now, and unlock all sorts of longevity and unlock personalized medication. I don't know if you saw NVIDIA today announced they've created their first genomes with I can't remember the name of their partner on it, but they're not just understanding and reading genomes, they're writing genomes now. It's incredible what this is going to do for personalization of medication and care. So there's so much to be optimistic about. There's things to be pessimistic about, but what we need to make peace with is that we're probably not going to get our heads around it. And we're going to be operating a little bit in the dark.
Just come in for an next question, Rich. So Brian Cox is probably my favorite TikTok feed, and he made this point the other day. With increasing technology, it will be theoretically possible to travel at near light speed. So we could go to the next galaxy and bring the thinking and the technology back. Only problem is 4 million years will have elapsed.
Jeez. So with all this conversation we've just had, I mean, as an investor, where are you putting your dollars?
Well, I think big listed companies are going to have to integrate this technology. So I think for most investors, still following S&P 500, still following like a really diverse group of interesting, exciting listed tech companies is always a good bet. Or if you can, sit on cash, because I think
wait for the opportunities.
Yeah, I think wait for the opportunities a little bit right now. Probably some stocks are overinflated, and look at like a DeepSeek announcement. Like look at what that did to an Nvidia. Look at what that did to, I think it was like the biggest single wipe off ever. So again, with that rate of innovation, there will be some shocks which will shake up markets. And for those who do have cash, will present a good opportunity to invest. But I think at the end of the day, still playing safe right now. Like I don't think it makes sense to hyper focus on specific companies unless you are a professional investor. Yeah. I don't think that is the right investment advice.
Crypto.
And crypto, yeah, I love crypto, of course. I mean,
what do you love about it?
I love that I've done well in it. that's certainly my favorite part. What do I like about crypto? I think it will be the property of the 2010s and 20s. When you hear about these people who just were so smart with 110% mortgages in London in the 1980s, and you're just like, yeah, that's genius. I would have done that. Like I genuinely believe that for those who are in early to crypto, it will be not generational wealth, but it will be life-changing money for those individuals. And I think that's amazing.
So, Roei, are you talking about being in early? I mean, are we still early?
I think so. I mean, I think with the amount of institutional money now in Bitcoin, with the fractionalization of that, I think there's going to be big opportunities there. I think Ethereum is still got a long way to go. Like when they do inevitably announce the ETFs in Ethereum, like that's going to have a massive store in the price. But I also think that compared to the types of return profiles you'll get on pretty much any other available asset right now, 100%. But diversification, right? So I still believe like S&P 500, those types of indexes, it's never going to go that wrong. It's a good place to part money, cash if you can, and then crypto. Yeah.
Portfolio life, portfolio investments. You've already given us a wealth of advice, and you're wise beyond your years. So you must have had some amazing mentors. So what role has mentoring played in your journey?
It's massive, right? Life's too short to make all the mistakes you make, right? You've got to hope there's some people around you who've made even bigger mistakes than you have to try and learn from that. Got very, very fortunate. My first investor into real sport was a guy called Nigel Ray. Nigel was the first investor into Domino's Pizza, Nutmeg, the private bank, Vice Media, ended up owning Saracens Rugby Club, and awesome advisor. What a guy to learn from at 23 years old, right? So that was amazing. And he joined the board, and his team joined the board, and he's actually my lead investor and connected as well. So that's been fantastic. Tony Neum, who's one of my investors as well. Awesome guy. Tony, incredible story. IPO'd companies, reprivatized, IPO'd, now founder of an amazing legal tech platform called Right Hub. So been really fortunate with great mentors, advisors, and now friends as well. I think the entrepreneurial journey can be a very lonely one. I think if you do it right, you're almost going to end up isolated, which is a bit, I don't want to sound negative saying that. I think the amount of time you end up spending with your team, with the people that you're building with, means that you're going to have to deprioritize time spent in real relationships and friendships. Not to say you don't build real relationships with your team, but they're building their lives around that, and you've got to understand that, right? They're going to have their family and their friends, but you probably aren't going to have the same type of social life building in that way. So there's a bit of isolation, bit of loneliness, but that's where these groups, these networks of mentors, of other founders, of other entrepreneurs who get it and been on that journey really are key. And you learn a hell of a lot when you're into those circles.
Roy, it reminds me of this wonderful quote from Jeff Bezos, who talks about the two pizza team, right? You can't have more than people kind of share two pizzas around the table, and that's the size that you should have. And then there's a lot of talk today about having a $1 trillion company which has less than 10, 20 people in it, and also a 1 or 2 person $1 billion company which is probably on the horizon if not already here. So what's your take on that whole thing? Do you think we're going to see a smaller group of people doing bigger and massive things?
Well, it's an interesting one, right? There's no blueprint to success or the right way to run businesses. Bezos, 2 pizzas, classic. CEO, founder of NVIDIA, says he won't do 1-to-1s, he does 1-to-70s. Because if there's information that one person needs, 70 people need it. Yeah. So you couldn't feed them with 2 pizzas, right? And impossible to say the right way to do these things. But I do certainly think you are correct that the future of squads, I really believe startups are going to be small teams, not even just building one product. It's going to be about the collaboration economy where a group of individuals are building 6, 7, 8, 9 products because the barriers to entry just aren't there. The cognitive load, the time, the expense of building your initial startup. Now that same input should breed so much more output. So small teams with multiple products, I actually believe is the future of working.
Richie and I obviously come from the world of marketing, whatever marketing is. What's your take on how marketing, specifically within the context of entrepreneurship and so on, how marketing is evolving?
Creator-led, right? I think it's amazing how budget spend will have changed on like big online campaigns, right? And the makeup and the content of those campaigns. I really think, and I was reading about a fund recently, it was just investing in creators to find whatever product to sell into their market. So community first, creator led, I really believe is the future. So again, differentiation as an individual, build your moat around yourself, build your personal brand. But I really believe it's creator led, community led rather than brand led, if that makes sense.
Sort of a related question to that and around building your moat. And we talk about access to individuals, and great entrepreneurs, once they're in with the Connect, will do the right thing and knock it out of the park. And Connect is helping with the elements of giving them the tools to achieve that once they're through the door. And so you've got some amazing mentors in tow. But what advice would you then give as someone who has built a moat around your own personal brand and been able to achieve success through that? How would you advise people who don't have access to get access?
Yeah, I mean, becoming a thought leader is fantastic. We spoke about this just before the podcast, right? Resonance with your audience. So becoming a thought leader is really, really important. Credibility, trust, all those great things that you can build when you are establishing yourself as someone with authority, expertise, knowledge, and also authenticity. Some people, when I give them this advice, they say, well, I'm not an expert yet on anything. Okay, become the expert on becoming an expert. You know, just be transparent, authentic with where you are in your journey. I have a friend who went from recruitment to becoming a product manager. And he was like, yeah, but I know nothing about product management yet because I just started. I'm like, well, you've just, that's the journey, right? You've gone from recruiter to product manager.
So true.
You know, so I think it's just about speaking from an authentic place, being hyper real with yourself about where you are in your journey. When it comes across as inauthentic, you do see them, the course sellers who are, and to be fair, I love the hustle. You see these 17-year-old kids telling you how to make 5 million quid and buy a penthouse in Dubai. And it's just like, okay, come on. I respect the hustle, but I think you need to be really authentic.
And what penthouse is 5 million now? 10 million, you mean?
There you go. Exactly that. Well, that's when you unlock the second course, right? But it's exactly that, you know, it's I think it's going to be really authentic on that side. And I think the other big thing is you have to get over your ego. And people get really confused about posting content. Some people think it's really egotistical to post content and to put yourself out there. But actually, the egotistical thing is to stop yourself from doing it because you care too much about how other people perceive you. And actually, that's the ego part to it, is the, oh, well, I don't want someone to have a bad perception of me or someone to think, like, forget them, right? Don't put yourself out there. Go for it if you want to and believe in yourself. But actually, the part of ego that's holding you back is not the part that wants to promote yourself. It's the part that's concerned with other people's perception of you. To get over yourself, get over the ego, and put yourself out there.
To link a couple of the things you said, like kids going through school, what world of work are they going to enter? And then you've talked about hustling. And the question that comes to me from that is, so and maybe that's a leading answer, but what should schools be teaching kids today?
It's such an interesting question. I spoke to a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur the other day, and I was like, my unfair advantage is I don't have kids because I haven't had to really think about these things deeply. Good friend of mine, Simon, he talks about this a lot. And I think I experienced this when I was a kid. The school education system is not really fit for purpose for where we are in 2025. And I think it creates a lot of pain for a lot of people, actually. If you fit in the box, I don't say that in a negative way, but if you fit in the traditional box of I'm going to become a lawyer or a doctor or something where I need to follow a prescribed route, school can be a really good thing. But if your brain just doesn't work that way, if your mind just works in a slightly different way to what the system is designed for, you're going to start feeling a bit of shame, a bit of judgment, a bit of negativity. And those emotions, when unresolved, can really spiral into manifesting in all sorts of negative ways. When, oh, I don't fit in, therefore, how could I ever X? How could I ever do this? How could I ever be that? And without ambassadors of people saying, well, actually, no, you can be amazing if you just slightly point what you're learning or what you're trying to achieve this way, I think we can undo a lot of pain. So I would love to see schools becoming more pragmatic and more open with the way that they try and guide kids to appreciate the weird and wonderful all of our brains work. What I'll also say is, as an ADHD kid, that presented as, disruption, low attention span, zero concentration, all the rest of it. Well, guess what? The iPad generation, that's going to be inbuilt. Yeah. The zero concentration span, the zero attention. So, we got to get used to these ADHD style kids coming through, right?
Isn't it true? Look, sticking on the theme, I've got to ask, right? So you went to Nottingham and have had such a fun time doing it, right? And all the ventures around that. If you had to have your time again, 1, would you go back? And 2, what would you study?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a bit counterintuitive to what I said, because I think university is a really good thing, not necessarily just because of what you study. It's the relationships you build, it's the time that you have, and it's actually the space that you have to think about what you want to do. Had I not gone to university, I don't know if I would have been a founder I don't know, because I might have felt that pressure of, oh God, I got to get on with it, get a job. And then actually you're earning money quickly, and then there's that opportunity cost. For me, going to university was a sandbox environment to play around and mess up and have fun and do all those things. Didn't find my wife, but do all of those things and say, okay, cool, I get it. Oh, I can build my own opportunities. Oh, I don't need to follow a employment route. I can make things for myself. So I think university was an amazing thing. I will say I was one of the last years of the old fee structure. So I don't know.
You got away with it.
I got away with it. Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
I love that your father lost everything at 47 and then had his big one at 69.
Yeah.
So what's the big one for you?
Whether we like it or not, we're all going to live to at least 100, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That is,
Plenty of time.
That is the reality. So I think the concept of anything but lifelong learning is a dangerous one, right? If you don't have that mentality, like, I don't think, especially with men, from what I've seen, we're designed to retire, right? I think we have to, and I can only speak as a man, but I think we have to always wake up with that thing to do, that thing to pursue. Like, I don't think retirement necessarily works well. I think you need to find good ways of balance and life and enjoying what you're doing. But for me, I just want to continue to learn. I think there's so much good that needs to be done in the world. And with Connected, hopefully we enable part of it. But I want to continue learning and growing so that at some point I can do something which is really, really impactful and positive and helps as many people as I can. So lifelong learning, absolutely. And there's got to be, I don't want to go too philosophical, but I think as with any entrepreneur, any creator, as you guys, it's amazing how much of your life you're willing to give to your project. Like, it's crazy how much we're willing to do and forgo and sacrifice to build. And for me, that can't then just be about money. It can't just be about, if I'm willing to give as much as I am of my life away and sacrifice everything to create, there's got to be a purpose beyond it than just what money can we make. So I want to be able to channel that energy into something which genuinely does good.
So I saw this study the other day which said that after retiring, Deloitte partners have a lifespan of about 4 years because they're basically done. And yet we're going to be living to 100. And so it probably isn't a question there, but how do you think about the fact that we're going to be hanging around for a lot longer and a lot of automation and, struggling for purpose maybe? So yeah, how do you make sense of all of that?
Do you know what's so funny? It was when I heard that Deloitte study a couple of years ago, that was actually one of the things that really woke me up to that.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right? If you go from purpose building to nothing, it can't be good, right? I don't think we're designed for that. The Japanese have a concept, I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but it's about finding that purpose thing. Often it's quite manual work, it might be crafting, but it's something to build, something to create. And it's one of the reasons they say they have such longevity is because it's that constant building, creation, however you want to see it. I think that's interesting. Almost the journey that individuals go on post-retirement is almost the journey the world is going to go on post-AI, in terms of like, how do we find that purpose? But look at Sam Altman, who ran his own UBI test, his own universal basic income test. Did you guys see this? Oh. So he put up 45 mil of his own money to run a test where he took a small town in America and basically employed what universal basic income would be. So he gave all of them, I want to say like 100 grand a year for 2 or 3 years. And the results...
I'd like to be in that village.
I know, right? Pretty good. And the results are fascinating. It's like a third of the people find huge purpose. They pick up that instrument they always wanted to learn. They're spending more time with the family. A third of them went off the rails, and just like trying to figure out what they do and drinking and all the rest of it. And a third of them just continue to work. They got the 100 grand, but they continue to do their job. I can't remember if it was exactly a third, but it was these three clear segments. And we all might have to face up to what that retirement looks like. Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of the segment, Roei, and you know what I've thought about? The visualization that I have, sort of speaking to you, is that you're able to hold up a range of often conflicting concepts in your mind, and it kind of just feels so well jigsaw puzzled together in that way. Maybe not so well, but certainly trying to figure things out. So it's a lovely macro perspective view that you've presented here today. And I guess trying to make sense of it all in a world where we know we can't make sense of everything. But yet if you've got younger people coming through who are going to live to 150 by that time in that moment in their lives, I mean, what advice would you give them?
Well, first, it's very interesting, the idea of holding conflicting ideas at the same time. It's the human condition, right? If we look at any of our structures and systems, it's not the things that make sense. It's not the things that really add up that define them. It's all these conflicting ideas that we all hold. So yeah, certainly plays out in my mind as well. The advice that I would give to early founders looking at this now, was that the question?
Younger people.
Yeah, younger people. What are we all trying
invest in crypto?
Invest in crypto. There you go.
Go on.
There you go. Rug pull. No, don't do that. Don't do that. What are we trying to achieve here? Right? What are we trying to achieve? Is it about progressing human health? Is it about lowering poverty? Is it about acquisition of wealth? Is it about happiness? Like, what is it all for? Right? And if we assess the journey that civilization has been on over the last 10,000 years, if it's happiness, are we really proud of what we've done? Possibly. I think we've raised a lot of objective standards in a really impactful way, in an amazing way. But have we contributed to human happiness in the way that we might have wanted to? I don't know. And I think there's a lot of pressure on young people now. To achieve very quickly and substantially. And I think my advice to young people is don't beat yourself up. You know, you've got to put happiness at the core of what you're doing. And especially if we're right about the disruption to traditional ways of working, that ability to say, well, what's going to make me happy? And to follow that, then it's got to be that. It's got to be that. Like, bring happiness into what you do. Otherwise, what's the point?
Lovely way to finish. Put happiness at the core. Been an absolute pleasure, Roei. Fantastic to have this time with you.
Guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it.